There you are, Chair. Ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Good afternoon and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, the 11th of November 2025. I am the Chair, Councillor Tim Bowen. I'm not going to go through all the house rules. Everybody should know one by now. If you need to speak, please raise your electronic hand and we'll fetch you in. Just use the chat function if you've got a problem or if you need to ask a question. So I'll move straight on to, we have had a couple of apologies, Councillor Morgan and Councillor Lewis. And we should have had a new member, Jamie Adams, but he hasn't joined at the moment. So we'll find out what's going on there. So we'll now move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any, please? No, can't see any.
Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Agenda item 3, response from the Chief Executive Officer, South West Wales Corporate Joint Committee in relation to the direction of travel of the CJC and SBCD. I think we had Councillor Hawley, you'd like to come in and add something to this, please?
Yeah, what I'd like to know, Chair, is, when we have, I know this is for information, so I understand that. What I'd like to know is exactly a timescale for the CGC taking over from our scrutiny function, because I think there are a couple of issues within our scrutiny function that we would like to see ended. So if it's possible, if we could have a letter coming back from either the Chief Executive or from the chair of the CGC, which is Councillor Rod Stewart, if we could have some sort of information from them to the members of this scrutiny panel so that we know exactly when and our responsibility ends for this particular process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I can also see Councillor Sparks.
Yeah, thank you. And I thank you, Chair. I don't disagree with Chris, but I just would like to point out that at the end of the letter from the Chief Exec, it says that she can assure us that all necessary steps have been taken with the process. Updates will continue to be provided to all relevant committees as the process advances. So they've recognised our interest already, and that they're going to continue to update us. I just think, we're in danger of repeating ourselves if we say it again, Chair, but that's just my view. Yeah,
what I'll do, Councillor Hawley and Councillor Sparks, we'll take some guidance from Craig and see what he comes back with, and we'll let all members know then which direction we go in on that, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, we'll move on to item 4, the Swansea Bay City Deal Audit of Accounts. And
Sorry, Chair. Could we just note that item, if that's okay?
Oh, yeah, sorry. As previously mentioned, this item is for information purposes, so we note the report.
Thank you.
Item 4, the Swansea Bay City Deal Audit of Accounts, pages 7 to 56. And would officers like to add anything to this report?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is a report from the Auditor General responsible for providing an opinion on whether the statements demonstrate a true and fair view of the City Deal as of the 31st of March 2025. You can see on page 13, there's a summary showing the findings of the audit. So the report provides an unqualified, true and fair opinion with no significant matters needing reporting, and there were no uncorrected misstatements in the account. The auditor also concluded that the reports have been properly prepared in accordance with the legislation requirements. So following this, the Auditor General signed off his report on the 29th of October. I just want to clarify, what it says is a true and fair opinion and no misstatement. It's basically a clean audit report. And good news. And as we've had in previous years, no issues have been reported. So that's all I can say on that one. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Any questions, please? I can't see any. So this report is information, so we note the report. Item 5, the Swansea Bay City Deal Joint Committee Statement of Accounts. Any officers need add any information?
Thank you, Chair. It's me again. Yes, so given that the Auditor General audit report stated no issues and no amendments were needed to the report, I'm not going to go through the report again today because I believe it went to this committee last month. Just want to say that it was signed off by the Chair and the SRO on the 17th of October. Thanks.
Do members have any questions? No, can't see any. The report is in for information, so we note the report. So moving on to item 6, Swansea Bay City Deal Financial Monitoring Q1 2025, pages 135 to 142. Do the officers have any more information? Stephen?
Yep, thank you again. It's me again. So yeah, so this is for Q1 of this current financial year. So it's a standard report, so it's split into several sections. So but I'll draw your attention to Appendix A, and I believe that's on page 140. So this year, the Joint Committee and accountable body, the expenditure is provisionally estimated at 1.725 million, and we're looking at accrued interest on our balances held of about 1.605 million, which will be distributed to the 4 local authorities throughout the year. So for the Portfolio Management Office, the expenditure is projected to be 538,000. So the POMO staffing costs come to about 422,000, projected to be 422,000, and that includes the accepted pay award for this year. So this is a slight underspend of 11,000 against budget because we budget for all posts at the top of grade, and the pay award was slightly less than what we did originally budget for. You can see the income. This is set out in the funding contributions towards the bottom of the appendix. So we're projecting income for this year as 2.202 million. So as I said, 1.605 million. This is from the interest from our balances held, and a further 596,000 top slice from the grants we dispersed to the partners. So the top slice is about 225,000 less than expected when we set the interim budget at the start of the year, as we are forecasting higher in-year City Deal grant expenditure. But again, this is purely a timing issue. So due to this top slice, a reduction in the top slice, we are projecting a deficit balance at year end of 179,000. So couple this with our brought forward deficit balance of 255,000. We are now forecasting a reserve deficit balance of 434,000 at year end. And although this is a deficit, again, this is primarily down to the timing issue of the top slice being generated and will be offset in future years once the City Deal partners spend all their grant and we distribute that to them. So if you move on to 3.1, so the Portfolio Investment Fund, I believe it's on page 136, we can now see that the total investment for the 15 years of the project is now 1.39 billion. So this compares well to the previous revised budget of 1.374 billion. So there's a few reasons because of this, and I'll just detail a few of them. So the digital infrastructure, it's leveraged an additional 1.1 million private sector investment. And again, with private sector investment, the Pembroke Dock Marine project has leveraged additional 1.3 million, and that's due to the Meta and Meath projects. Supporting innovation, low carbon growth, it demonstrated an additional 10.2 million. This is mainly due to the Welsh Government's Tata Transition Fund, and the Swansea Waterfront Digital Village Scheme is showing an additional 3.5 million. This is due to commitments being omitted from the previous return, which they should have included in Q4, but they were omitted. So for this year, if you look at purely for this year's annual forecast, we are showing an underinvestment of 67.3 million. So for the projected investment of the year, so this includes private sector, public sector, and grant spend of 171.7 million. The bulk of this 67 million underinvestment is due to the HAPS project, and that's almost 57 million in year. So there was a decision made by the HAPS project to reimburse the registered social landlords on completion of the scheme. So this has resulted in an underspend of the City Deal grant this year of 6.3 million and private sector funding of 50.3 million within the current financial year. So this funding has, however, I must stress, been allocated and will be released in future years. The PDM projects with Pembroke Dock Marine, they show an in-year underspend of 3.5 million. So this is in relation to the PDI grant element, but this is not a true underspend, as the grant funding had already been utilised in previous financial years, but the revised budget for which we set in Q4 24-25 had not been updated to reflect this. So it's just, I wouldn't say it's an error, but it's not reflected correctly in this year's budget. And then moving on to the Pentra Owl project. So Zone 1 fit-out costs are likely to be 3 million of these fit-out costs are now likely to be incurred in the first quarter of 26-27 rather than 25-26. So I'm sorry, support and innovation, low carbon growth is showing a variance of 7.1. And I must point out an error in the report for the H2 stimulus. So the report states there was a reduction in the total project value for the H2 stimulus of 0.7 million. So this was an error in the spreadsheet I issued to the partners, and this figure was not correct. So there is no reduction to the £2 million project. And that's been corrected for Q2 going forward. So we won't have that issue going forward. And again, as I mentioned previously, Swansea waterfront is 3.5 million overspend, due to commitments being omitted from the previous returns. So just to conclude, so although we're showing a forecast to vary by negative 67 million in the financial year, this variance has been profiled to be used in years 9 to 11. So that's next year, so 26, 27 to 28, 29. So there's no reported outputs, no reported effect on total outputs, investment or benefits to the portfolio. So I just want to stress that we are anticipating greater than originally forecast both public and private sector expenditure. Just to clarify, with the private and sector funding, we've received 133 million. And that's roughly about 20% of the target of our total private sector funding. And this 133 million is roughly about 25% of the total spend to date. So with the private sector funding, I know it's quite a focus is being shifted now towards more of the private sector. So we just want to clarify that with the private sector, most of the projects we're forecasting to achieve the private sector towards the back end of the delivery. So it's quite normal that the amount of private sector achieved to date is not as high compared to the rest of the spend. But we do monitor this on a quarterly basis, and there are some projects that are overachieving, and that's digital infrastructure in particular. They've achieved a significant amount of private sector this year and in previous years, sorry. So that's all I've got for this one. Quite open for any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you on that, Stephen. I can see Councillor Hawley, got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you, Stephen. Going on to the page, I think it's page 4 of the report, I think it is. Yeah, 4. It says this portfolio summary. I heard what you said about the public sector, the private sector investment capital would be towards the end of the project, because the variance currently admitted is 52 million. What are we talking about there then? Because I know that quite a lot of the City Deal private sector was going to be in housing.
The HAPS project.
Is that the same now? So are we looking at that difference, because the difference is substantial right across the whole of the 15 years, as opposed because if the total investment project total at the moment is 171, so is that going to be the same right across the project, or are we going to see a substantial increase in the next, I don't know, 2 years?
Hopefully, yes. It's particularly the bulk of our private sector relates to the HAPS project. I'm just trying to find my figures, bear with me, sorry. So yeah, so the private sector, we're projecting, sorry, it's a bit small, let me make my screen a bit bigger. So the report is saying total private sector projected to the end of for the total project is 719 million. So, and half of that roughly is the HAPS projects. They're expecting 275.6. I need my glasses. So yeah. And I think due to the way that project's been set up, as we get closer to the end of the delivery of the city deal, we will see that coming on leaps and bounds. And we've been reassured by the project that they are on target to achieve at least that 375 million as well. So another substantial one is Pentra Owl as well, as 110 million. So that's obviously for phase 2, 3, and 4, I believe. So once they've been determined, they will start flowing through as well. Digital, 97.8 million. Yeah, no issues with them at all, and they're overachieving anyway. So we're more than reasonably confident that we will achieve our private sector funding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you happy with that, Chris?
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, I can't see any more questions on this one. The report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 7, appointment of the new senior responsible owner for Swansea Bay City deal, pages 143, 148. I'm not quite sure who's taking this. Jonathan?
Chair, it's myself. Deb Smith sends her apologies. She had a clash in the diary, so she wasn't able to attend. But Deb, as the monitoring officer, would normally present this, but I'm happy to. Appointment of the SRO, the senior responsible owner of Swansea Bay City deal. So this is a new arrangement to appoint the SRO. Just to give a bit of background to what the role is, it's accountable to the Swansea Bay City Deal Joint Committee, ensuring that the programme, the portfolio and all the stuff associated with it have appropriate governance in place. So the first appointment was made back in June 2020, and there's an appendix 1 in the report, Chair, and for members to have a look at the details of the role and responsibilities. So the SRO for the City Deal is also the chair of the programme board. That has been Wendy Walters, and that's just over 5 years that Wendy took up that role. It was just before I came into post, in addition to her role as chief exec for Carmarthenshire County Council. So the kind of feeling is that now that all projects and programmes and business cases have been approved and that we're in delivery across the portfolio, it's proposed that Wendy Walters steps down as the SRO, and it's now undertaken by other officers going forward. So the proposal is in conjunction with the Joint Committee approved back in July 2025 that the alignment between the Swansea Bay City Deal and the CJC for South West Wales governance arrangements have a kind of convergence or merger put in place. And I know that that relates to the letter that you received back from Wendy earlier this month. So what's been proposed and what's been approved by Joint Committee is that the SRO role is undertaken by a director with responsibility for economic development. The agreement is that each of the 4 councils will have a nominated person, and they will rotate on a 12-monthly basis around the 4 local authorities, each director resuming that SRO role for a 12-month period. It's proposed in the first instance that the person taking on that role is from Pembrokeshire County Council, Richard Brown, who is the Assistant Chief Exec. Richard also resumes responsibility for economic development under his role, and he will be appointed, it says with immediate effect in the report, but Wendy will provide a handover between now and probably January's meeting for Richard to resume that position. And then, as I said, 12 months from that, then we'll rotate with the other directors across the region. Chair, the only other thing I want to note is there's a commitment from the region to work with both Welsh and UK government as part of the future discussions around the governance and the future governance requirements for the Swansea Bay City deal, and assurances for making sure that things, however they converge and merge with the CJC, that the Swansea Bay City deal portfolio still has appropriate governance and resources to help deliver and support that benefit realisation stage and the delivery stage of the portfolio. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions or any observations on that.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Do any members have any questions? No, I can't see it. This report is for information, so we note the report.
Chair, sorry, Councillor Sparks.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand coming up, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was a bit slow off the mark there, Chair. So I blame it on being the afternoon. I just wanted to comment that no, it's good to see this, a phase, and following on from Chris's comments earlier, it's nice to see that we've got some work going on behind the scenes to get this collaboration of the two organizations together. I think that's welcome news, Chair. So
okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. As stated, this report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 8, Portfolio Gateway Review, Report and Action Plan, pages 149, 166, and this is Jonathan.
Thanks, Chair. This feels many moons ago that this happened, but back in July, we had a Portfolio Gateway Review. The report that you have in front of you is to inform you of the outcome of that review, and there's an action plan associated with that in response to the recommendations. So that's the purpose of the report. So 17th to 19th of July is when the Gateway Review took place. The primary purpose is to review the outcomes and objectives of the portfolio. In other words, how do they fit together? Are they working? And confirm that they make the necessary contributions to the overall strategy. What outcome we had for it, they call a DCA, a Delivery Confidence Assessment rating, and that was an amber green. And what we're told by the external Gateway Review team is that at a portfolio of this complexity and size and timing, amber green is the best rating we could have at this point. Until everything's in delivery and delivered, we would only ever receive a green rating at that point. So it's the best rating we could have at this point of the portfolio. As part of the process, 16 stakeholders were part of the review. That's in the Annex B in the report, if anybody wants to see who was part of that. And what the review team did was provided 2 recommendations. There's a lot of narrative around the recommendations and the review, but the 2 recommendations were sent to the portfolio SRO, which is Wendy Walters, and I'll just cover off those 2 now. So the first one is about developing a benefit management strategy and plan. So we talked about that a lot in the Scrutiny Committee, making sure that what we said we would do, we're actually delivering. So this strategy document is an overarching document. We have a lot of the stuff in place around benefit maps, benefit registers, benefit profiles, all that stuff, the mechanics that are there. This is just an overarching document around that. And what they've asked us to do is incorporate the private sector leverage to shape the focus of the portfolio going forward as well. And again, as Stephen's already indicated, we already do that, and it is reported through reports. We just will elevate that and making sure that all stakeholders, and scrutiny included, will have better sight of that private sector leverage. So that's the first recommendation, benefit management strategy and plan. The second one relates to benefits. It's around the profiling of skills and staffing for the Portfolio Management Office to support the benefit management, and the alignment towards the business cases, what they said they would do. But I would also cascade that out to the projects and programs within the lead delivery organizations to make sure that there's resource there. Because once you've delivered something in terms of a building, it's making sure what comes behind that in terms of the outcomes and impact are monitored and measured and reported. So the skills and staffing, I would say, is across the whole portfolio, not just within the central team. But that's the second recommendation. What it also says in the report is that when the next review should take place, it's not dictated to us. It is up to us as we do that. It says 12 to 18 months time, which potentially could be around October 2026. Worth noting to the committee that last year we skipped a year because this is an annual assurance review. But because of where we were with the portfolio and how stable the governance arrangements were, we did skip a year. It wasn't these reviews cost about £6,000 approximately. So there was no point in spending that money and undertaking a review with all the people's time if recommendations were sort of drying up around the governance arrangements and how the portfolio was working. So we did skip a year. So we are looking towards October 26, but that will go through a discussion process near the time to make sure that we do it appropriately. And there's an action plan associated with those two recommendations and the key actions that were taken, which we're already in the process of responding to each of those recommendations, Chair. So again, any observations or any questions, I'm happy to take any.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawley, sorry, I think we had you down for the question.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get it off me. Reading through it, John, Gateway's reviews are, in many cases, it's a snapshot in time, isn't it? And that when this was done, we've moved on slightly from here, I would suspect anyway. But the one thing that I noticed was on page 7 of 14, there was approximately 536 million of Swansea Bay funding, which of the order of 1.3 billion has been spent to date. It's unclear to the review team what this represents in terms of earned value position, i.e. financial consumption within the plan. I know what it says, but it doesn't. I don't think it means what it says. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Because it doesn't actually read correctly. If I'm right, they are saying, or they don't know what the earned value position is, or what the GVA or anything like that is. But it actually, you've made it quite clear what it is in quite a lot of our scrutiny functions meetings. So I'm not sure whether or not they understood that. Am I right?
I didn't pick up on that from reading I'll reread it just to double check. But when we get a review report, unless something is factually incorrect, we can't change the narrative because it's by the external team. So I think probably what they wrote is how much investment had been made across the region, which is factually correct. And what you're raising is correct. But the fact of it is we have, I think Stephen said it was 542 currently. It was probably a little bit less by the time that report was undertaken. But it is investment that has been reported and effectively defrayed. So however that is, but I'll have to reread it, Councillor Holly, just to make sure it's factually correct. But I think it is. Yeah.
I think going on a bit more, there's about opportunities to participate in a regeneration Celtic Free Ports initiative for the job creation office gate, which you have said yourself about office space that's being vacated for new office development at 71, 72 the Kingsway, an example. So a lot of what they've caught up on is already what we already knew anyway. Yeah. So I found it quite difficult when I was reading it. They didn't actually give us any more information than what we had, and yet we are on a couple of months on from it, and I was wondering if there's any changes that you need to tell us about that they've not missed out, but what they haven't actually said about.
They work to a scope and they work to a time, as you said. It is a snapshot in time. So, at that time of reporting, between what was factually given to them in reports and what was gathered through the conversations with stakeholders, that's what the report is. And the whole idea of assurance, slightly different on audit, is a more forward look. What can you do to unblock any potential issues going forward? And what they've identified through the narrative is the fact of the benefit strategy and the resource to help benefit realization is the focus of what the stakeholders fed back to them and what they read from the documents. So there are, and as you said rightly so, there are lots of evaluations that will come forward which will look at the wider impact of the city deal. But what we are currently reporting mostly is the direct, particularly around the builds and the operations of what we're doing. The other things are yet to come through the pipeline. So yeah, so I will reread it for the factual part on the two sections that you called out, just to make sure that it is factual. But I think based on what they've written there, there's nothing factually incorrect. It's maybe how it's positioned.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah, Chris, you're happy with that? Anybody else got any more questions? No, I can't see. This report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 9, Swansea Bay City Deal Project Closure Report, pages 167, 168. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chair. So quite some time ago, all of our project teams, we have regular monthly meetings, and one of the things that they identified that would be useful is to have what you now have in front of you, which is a project closure template and report. So just to give you context, we have 39 things that will be delivered across the city deal. Lots of that is infrastructure, but some of it could be things like apprenticeships and pilot projects and various things like that. So what the project teams asked for is a closure template for the project elements, those 39 things. So what we did as a PMO was worked with all project teams, including the project managers, to shape and develop this template. So we used best practice. We utilized other project closure reports, as you would expect, things like WEFO, leveling up, various things like that. And we kind of pulled all those things together for best practice, what it already exists, and the feedback from the project teams. And we've devised this template that you have in front of you. So the whole point of the project elements, the components, having a closure is that there is again, a point in time assessment done as to whether it achieved what it set out to do. It's covering things like lessons learned. How do we evaluate the outcomes and the performance of what we did? So the report provides 14 sections. It's very comprehensive. Not all of those are compulsory to fill in. We've given guidance notes since providing this report to all project teams as to what they need to fill in and how they can do that. We will provide support to them through that process as well. Some of the projects will have to retrospectively fill those in because, as we know, we have over a handful now of key buildings which are now operational. I'll give an example: the Bay Technology Centre, the arena, the Pembroke Dock infrastructure. Those will all fill in their project closure reports retrospectively, and we'll put those through governance. So again, from a scrutiny perspective, you can see, did each project element achieve what it set out to do, and what did they learn from it? What are there any outstanding risks or issues? Stuff around performance, all of those things will come through those reports. So for me, this is good practice. It's something that was requested by the project teams, and we are now cascading that out and starting to complete those project closure templates. And anything that comes through the pipeline with closure, they will complete those post handover of buildings or closure of projects. So, Chair, that's the report and a summary of what's in there. There's a lot of detail in terms of what needs to be filled in, but that will be completed by the project teams.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Do any members have any questions?
I just think it's a good policy.
Thank you, Chris. I can't see any. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sparks.
Yeah, I was a bit quicker that time, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you was, yeah.
But I just like to say I think it's good practice, and it's nice to see the work going ahead. And also at this point, just like to congratulate Jonathan and the whole team really for all the delivery that's gone on to date as well. I think it's been a remarkable achievement, especially the projects that are going to leave a legacy. They're not just buildings, so there's lots going on with all of them. So well done to Jonathan and the whole team.
Thanks, Councillor Sparks. It's a complicated portfolio, but I think everybody's doing their part to help deliver and shape it as well, and hopefully catalyze other things, because it's not just about building the building, it's what's behind that. So hopefully we'll start seeing that coming through the pipeline as well.
Okay, thank you all. This report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 10, forward work programme 25-26. Do any members have questions or suggestions? And then over to Tom.
No.
I don't see any suggestions there, Chair. So as I sort of mentioned in pre-briefing, there aren't really any updates at present. However, I know at the beginning of the meeting we discussed about going away and sort of getting some guidance from officers in relation to the letter that we received back earlier this month. So I'll do that in conjunction with yourself, Chair, and we'll come back to the committee about possible next steps, or if there's any further information we can provide you. So I'll take that away after the meeting and do that.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Item 10, urgent items. I have no urgent items today, so I'd like to thank all members and all the officers for the reports and everything today, and everybody have a good week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.